Hey guys, so this is bad lighting. It's late at night and I'm sitting in an IHOP parking lot. So anyway, I'm going to be talking real quick here out of Deuteronomy chapter 2. We'll go with verses 1 through 7. How about 7? Alright, so basically before I even talk about anything else, I want you to think about somebody or something or a place that you are apt to maybe have confrontation with. Maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's a state of mind that you enter when you go to a certain place, such as a job, or maybe it's something else. Anywhere where there's uncertainty, but for the ease of conversation, let's just talk about someone that you don't like. Put it that way. Think of someone that you don't like, and think of someone when they wrong you. What exactly do you do? Whether you know them personally or whether you don't know them personally, how does it make you feel? And why do you do what you do? Just completely unplanned whatsoever. But oh my gosh, freaking light. Sorry, it's getting kind of difficult. I need some sunglasses. Reading in the book of Deuteronomy, as you know, Moses and Aaron are leading the people, the Israelites, I shouldn't say people, the Israelites, through the desert, and they're passing through these areas and towns, and God gives them specific instructions on what to do and how to deal with these people. So now that you have maybe got it in your head, a person or a place that you don't like, and you've come to your senses about what you do to deal with those people, let's take a look here at what God says. In Deuteronomy chapter 2, it says, let's go with verse 4. It says, God talking to Moses, give the people these orders. You are about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the descendants of Esau, and I'm sorry if that's pronounced wrong, who live in Schaar. They will be afraid of you, but be very careful. So verse 4, God gives Moses and Aaron the orders to pass through the territory of, if you notice the word brothers, and descendants, or your fellow man, or your fellow friend, or your fellow enemy, whatever it may be. It says, they will be afraid of you, but be careful. That doesn't really apply, or it may apply in your specific circumstance. The Israelites were known as God's people. They were known as warriors. So anywhere they went, they might be feared or anything, because they're known to have the power of God. So again, he says, you're about to pass through the territory of your brothers, the descendants of Esau who live in Schaar. They will be afraid of you, but God says to be very careful. Be careful in how you act, and we'll get into that. Verse 5 says, do not provoke them to war, for I will not give you any of their land, not even enough to put your foot on. And then verse 6 says, you are to pay them in silver for the food you eat and for the water you drink. So analyzing this, God tells them, he says, 1, don't provoke them, and 2, he says, respect their territory and respect their property. He says this by paying them in silver for the food they eat and the water they drink. Again in verse 9 with the Moabites, he says the same thing. Do not harass or provoke them. And again in verse 18 with the Ammonites, he says the same exact thing. He says in verse 19, when you come to the Ammonites, do not harass them or provoke them. In verse 9, do not harass the Moabites or provoke them for war, for I will not give you any part of their land. God calls us to love. In Exodus 23, verses 4 and 5, it says, let me get you the exact verse. In Exodus 23, verses 4 and 5, it says, "If you come across your enemy's ox or donkey wandering off, be sure to take it back to him." Verse 5, "If you see the donkey of someone who hates you fallen down under its load, do not leave it there, but be sure to help him with it." So God calls us to love, and it's various scriptures will tell you that, but in this instance, him saying, "Do not provoke them to war, do not harass them. Make sure you pay them in silver for the food and water that you consume." He's calling us to love. So again, relating that back to our current situation, how are we treating the people around us? Some of them we may like, but just because we like someone does not mean that we're always fair to them. So how are we treating the people that we like? How are we treating the people that we don't like? God calls us to do these things, to I made a note of it, to respect their property and to treat them justly. I wrote down here, he commanded we deal justly with our neighbors and we recognize their rights. And I know that's not always I know that's always not the easiest thing to do, but it's the godly thing to do since we're called to love. And why? Okay, well, God says in verse 7 that he, again talking to Israelites that have been previously wandering in the desert, he says, "The Lord God has blessed you in all the work of your hands. He has watched over your journey through this vast desert. These 40 years, the Lord your God has been with you, and you have lacked nothing." That's your answer. The reason that we act godly and we do not harass others, we respect their property, we pay for what we use, whether that be in respect or with that be in currency or work or anything. And the answer is, why we do this is because God will provide for us what we need. As he says in verse 7, the whole time they're wandering through, I'm going to put that window, holy moly. The whole time that they're wandering through the desert, their clothes were not worn, their feet were not swollen. God provided for them. He gave them everything they needed, so they didn't need to. Now, of course, there are battles, and there are God will soften the enemy to give land. But in this instance, because I know there's people out there that are going to say, well, what about, whatever. There are instances like that, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about Deuteronomy 2. So God will provide for us the things that we need. And he pointed it out with the people wandering through the desert. So we don't need to treat each other with disrespect. We need to help our fellow man, and we need to be godly and respect other people's property, because what's theirs is theirs. God says that he will not, with all of these people, the Moabites, Ammonites, he says, the people of Esau, he says the same thing. He says, do not harass them or provoke them to war. I will not give you any of their land, not even enough to put your foot on. So if it's not given to us from God, and we come across it ourselves, or we do something ourselves and we step on people to get it, whether we like them or not, if we stab them in the back, then that's not godly, and God will see to it that that's dealt with. So yeah, just think about how you're treating other people that you like, people that you don't like, a boss, your work, your school, your roommate, whatever it is, family members. Just read these passages and keep an open mind, and try to envision what they were thinking at the time, because at this point they had been wandering in the desert for years and years and years and years, and they had dealt with just everything. So their patience and their tolerance, I'm sure, was shot. But still, and yes, they did rebel against God, but it's the reason they're in the desert is because God kept them there to humble them, and until they came to terms with it to enter the promised land. So how long are you going to wander in your desert is my question. How long am I going to wander in my desert before I come across it to live a godly life, a humble life, to respect others, even those who I don't particularly like, or who don't particularly like me. The verses that we touched on, I just pray that God will give me peace, and give me knowledge on this, that He will give you even more knowledge on this and even more wisdom. I just pray that that anyone who's watching this and is affected by it is just blessed beyond measure. And once you are blessed, give that back to God, and He will strengthen you with more things than you could ever know. So until next time, Deuteronomy 2, try to love people and your enemies. Until next time, thanks for listening, and have a good night.